Moses gives his final instructions to the people, and upon crossing the Jordan, the people are to set up 12 stones on Mount Ebal. The stones are to be covered with plaster and inscribed with the laws which Israel is to obey. Ki Tavo concludes with a dramatic description of the recitation of the blessings and the curses. The tribes are divided into two groups, with Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, and Benjamin on Mount Gerizim reciting, excuse me, I need to let someone in, reciting Amen after each blessing is pronounced. And then Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, and Naphtali tribes on Mount Ebal respond Amen after each curse. So here we begin to see for the first time a prayer ritual emerging. If you think about the high holidays and the services that have this specific and beautiful and exacting liturgy that we recognize year after year, you must recall that it was not like this in biblical times. Sacrifices showed material plenty, that we had enough so that we could share our bounty with God. In Ki Tavo, which means when you first enter, it refers, of course, to the promised land. This is the first time that there is a specific structure and context for worshiping. By reciting the Jewish history, the Jews could not only identify with it, but also thank God that we were finally able to live in our own land. Okay, so now that you know everything that has gone on, Pnina?
I would like to add that a lot of times we overlook the fact that they were divided before entering the land into already the tribes that were occupying the land and never left. There were only 70 people who left to go down to Egypt. It was Jacob and his family when they found out that Joseph. But all the rest of them were there. And here we are knowing about 600,000 that came out of Egypt, but nobody's talking about the ones that remained there until the time that the family came to reunite with Joseph. So we have to understand that then what made it already the land ours, how come they went there? It's because it was already there for the Israelites, and the part that never left was still there. So they raised the flags according to the tribes when they entered to reunite with the ones who never left. It's very important to think that we didn't just live there and go into a country and say that's ours, that's mine. They were already theirs. It's just reuniting and re-entering a place that was theirs. So that's it. That's all. I think it's important to remember, because people think that we just invade a place, and it wasn't. It was already ours. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very glad to have that brought out in the open. Okay. When the people brought the first fruits to the priests, they are to say, "My father was a wandering Aramaean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. We cried to Adonai. Adonai heard our plea. Adonai freed us from Egypt and gave us this land. Wherefore, I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, Adonai, have given me." And if this sounds at all familiar to you, especially the line, "My father was a wandering Aramaean," it should, because this became the basis for the Passover Haggadah. Okay, so something different happens. in the third year of tithing. Anybody know what it is? Okay, instead of bringing the fruits normally that they would have brought to the sanctuary, it goes directly to the needy. So these are the people that we would say are welfare recipients. They are the Levites who do not own any land. They are the widows and the orphans and the strangers. And you're supposed to say, I have cleared out the consecrated portion from the house, and I have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, just as you commanded me. Look down from your holy abode, from heaven, and bless your people Israel and the soil that you have given us, a land flowing with milk and honey, as you swore to our ancestors. Adonai will make you the head, not the tail. You'll always be at the top and never at the bottom. If you do not deviate to the right or the left from any of the commandments that I enjoin you, your children will be blessed. And the Mishnah describes an amazingly colorful ceremony consisting of celebrating at night, then continuing in a parade onto Jerusalem led by flute, followed by an ox festooned with golden horns and a wreath of olive leaves. And when they arrived, the Levites would sing. This was the Macy's parade of their day. And this was so different from the way that Jews used to pray. This kind of represents a turn forward for how prayer has evolved, that now we have a set liturgy instead of the previous bloody sacrifices that went on that were very infrequent, but now they could be done with what we would call decorum. Okay, so the second part of this Torah portion deals with blessings and with curses. And do you remember I listed the names of who was going to be from which tribe on one side and with the blessings, and who was going to be on the other side with the curses? There was a particular reason for this. And on one side were the children of Rachel and Leah, and they were saying amen to the blessings. And on the other side were the children of the two handmaids.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting thing, how some would have the blessings and some would have the curses. It was, this was actually presented before in Leviticus Bahar Bechukotai, and the difference that this time it's presented in a special ritual where the tribal leaders pronounce them, then the Levites proclaim them to the people. This ritual consists of 12 curses that all begin with, "Cursed be the one who." All right, so I've streamlined them down because some of them were pretty racy. But basically the categories were idol builders, insulting parents, moving a neighbor's landmark, misleading a blind person, undermining the rights of strangers, and I really want to talk about that, orphans and widows, and then all kinds of sexual perversions. Secretly harming a neighbor, accepting a bribe, and failing to uphold the laws of the Torah. Okay, so the reason I wanted to go back to undermining the rights of strangers, orphans, and widows is I was absolutely gobsmacked when I heard about the governor of Florida who put 60 migrants on a plane to Martha's Vineyard. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but I'm from Boston. I was at Martha's Vineyard once, and I remember it was horrifically expensive, absolutely isolated. But these 60 people were told, well, we're sending you to Boston, and there they can streamline the process for you to be able to stay here legally. So that was a total blatant lie. So why did he do this? The reason is because he could, and you and I paid for it. Because this comes out of taxpayers' money to resettle these people. And my feeling is he just did it to stick it to the Democrats. I don't know about you, but this is really something that is a horrific thing to do, to take advantage of someone who is less fortunate, someone who puts their trust in us, and just go ahead as if it's fine and all right. Anybody want to say anything about that?
I thought it was interesting that a religious group ended up helping them. The church there.
Isn't that always the way? And what is interesting to me too is I know, because different charities that I work for, most of the recipients, not most of, the vast majority of the recipients, if any, are all not Jewish. Jews have always been willing to help anyone who needs help. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. And the reason I'm bringing this up is Martha's Vineyard is very small. I don't know if they even have a temple there. They might have one that meets once a month or something. But certainly if it was in Boston, where there are many substantial temples and synagogues, certainly something would have been done by the Jews.
Well, my point was that a religious group came forward first versus a government social service type of entity.
Ah, exactly. Okay, so we have finished with the
There is a Martha's Vineyard Hebrew Center, which is a Reform synagogue in Vineyard. Well, it's actually Vineyard Haven, Massachusetts. But is that close to Martha's Vineyard?
I would assume it's on Martha's Vineyard if that's what you looked up.
That's what it's called. I mean, I can't tell from this map. You know, it's tiny and I can't get it to spread out. But it's interesting. It's like right next to a Unitarian Universalist Society, which I assume is a church, and not too far down from Martha's Vineyard Masonic Temple. That's about as far as I can get into MapQuest at this point.
Very good.
You should be impressed.
I am very impressed, believe me. All right. What I wanted to tell you again is that I'm not seeing everybody's faces. So if I'm not seeing you and I can't call on you and you have something to say, please feel free to unmute yourself and join the conversation. Okay, on the flip side, Moses reassures the people that if they obey all the commandments, they'll enjoy 4 special blessings. And they each begin, "Blessed shall you be." And this is where they will happen. In the cities and countries, in the number of children, herds, and produce, in their baskets and kneading bowls, and finally, in their comings and goings. I see Lorraine Tamburini has raised her hand. Lorraine, please add something.
Hi, Rabbi Lynn. Lorraine Tamburino here. And
I'm eating, so that's why I have my video off. But I actually had a question because in some translations, when we start with the reading, it says, "My father, the Aramean, was a fugitive," but in others is, "My father, Aramean, who sought to destroy," or like there's an I think it's the Orthodox version of it, where the Aramean is associated with the seeking of the destruction, and that is a reference to Laban. So I was wondering how this dissected, and if you have any thoughts on that, because I was curious to see that there were two different versions of the text. In Sefaria, it reads as you were reading it here.
Okay, well, what I would say about that is Laban really did something that some people would have seen as criminal by requiring him to stay for 20 years. And that's the only reason I can think of that. But I'm not familiar with the Orthodox text as you are. Penina? Yes? You need to unmute.
I don't think it has anything to do with the Orthodox or non-Orthodox. It's a part of the Bible that tells you to remember you yourself once a stranger in a land. Arami Oved Avi means Avi, it means my father. Arami Oved Avi, it means that my father was also like the Aramites. And you have to remember that we all started in the beginning from Mesopotamia, which was not a Jewish or a law, a God, 10 Commandments laws observing people. So we are always, we have to try to remember that in order to be kind to the strangers. So we have to remind ourselves, Arami Oved Avi, we were the same as them once, and now we're not. That's it. That's a whole, it's not to separate. It's on the other hand, it's a sentence that's supposed to remind you that you are the same. That's why you're supposed to actually support them, teach them, care for them, help them, and so forth. That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Penina.
You are more than welcome.
I also found it
Susan.
confusing, as you did. But Abraham was from Amram, and he wanted to, so that I think is the grandfather, or the father was Aramean. You can look at it that way.
Yes.
He was the good guy from there, and Laban was the bad guy from there. No?
It wasn't a bad guy or a good guy. They weren't taught. Lavan was not taught because he lived in different parts of the country. And Rachel herself, when she left, she stole the idols.
Right.
And took it with her on the camel, or I think it's Rebecca, one of them. I don't remember if it was Rachel or Rebecca. So it shows you that our forefathers were all the same. We're all like the Aramites. And we are the one who entered the land, came through the process of the change, of recognizing that you're supposed to be a God's-fearing people, the way you put it together.
Okay. So, but you do have, I was answering Lorraine's issue of whether it's good, good or bad. So,
yes, we all started out not knowing exactly who we were, just like Rebecca and Rachel, who later on became mothers to the whole nation. They stole idols, they didn't know. Till the 10 Commandments came, they were all actually non-observant, I would say. They lived in Egypt, and they lived as Hebrews just by knowing that they belonged to that particular race, I would say, or not race, I would say people. But I don't think the connection that they had with God usually was personal. Jacob was talking to God, Isaac was talking to God, Abraham was talking to God, but there was no nation that abide by a certain set of laws till the 10 Commandments was finally given to them, and instructions, other instruction while they were traveling. So you have to also understand that once they come into the country, they would have to teach the people that already live there without getting the 10 Commandments. They were given there was no computers or telephones. They had to start teaching everybody else that never left that there is a set of law now. There is a new sheriff in town. That's it.
Well, I was answering Lorraine's specific question
Yes.
about my father.
Yes, remembering where we came from, therefore be kind to the people who are strangers. That's it.
Rather than good or bad, because she was raising the issue of
Yes.
good
Yes.
versus
Yes.
bad. It would be before and after, or not taught correctly. So there's a reason I'm saying a justification for her finding those two different interpretations.
Right. Right. We were nomads. You have to remember that. And there was a transformation there. So as nomads, nobody actually owned this land. Nobody actually walked that land. They were coming and going. There were tribes, just like any other nation.
Right.
So the whole idea was that when you come there, they were teaching even the ones who were there to walk the land, to form a connection, a permanent connection. No more nomads. Otherwise, you'll be disappearing from the maps. Look at history, how many tribes do not exist anymore. Not only in Judaic history, I'm talking world history. They became parts of either other nation or totally annihilated. So this is a way of connecting them to the land so they won't be annihilated. So they'll have a place to connect to and figure and become farmers and put connection to the land. So there won't be no more nomads disappearing. That's it.
Thank you so much for both of you for adding so much to this discussion. Okay, getting back to the Torah portion, Moses adds extra rewards for those who observe all the commandments. And the rewards include victory over their enemies, productivity of their herds and crops, abundant prosperity, and finally, leadership among the nations. He enumerates other punishments for those who fail to observe the mitzvot: calamity, frustration, sickness, blight, skies that turn to copper, and earth that turns to iron, destruction by their enemies, madness, blindness, dissolution of family ties, exile, ruthless rule by strangers, terrible famine, and finally, a return to slavery in Egypt. I don't know about you, but my husband sent me something that he read, and I believe it said, I think the figure was something astronomical, like there are 60 million people worldwide who are somehow enslaved currently. But all of the other things, it sounds like they're happening. The world is going to pot. Just everything that's going on is so hard to absorb and hard to accept. So it's kind of like not much is changing. Rabbi Simon ben Halafta made an interesting point. He felt that knowledge of the mitzvot in the Torah would warrant a greater punishment than if one didn't know about them. Think today of knowledge of the law, of most especially lack of knowledge of the law. It's not a successful defense in court. And I also think about the holidays. I think that was it Jane? It needs to mute.
The Torah.
Lady.
No, it says Jones Lady. Now I've lost the name.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
My computer, I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So the prayers that we say on The high holidays ask us to be forgiven, not only for what we know we've done, but the things that we have no idea that we've done. So when you think about it, do you think that knowledge of the law really, or lack of knowledge of the law, is a defense?
Mhm.
Any opinions?
I mean, people will use it as a defense, but that doesn't make it right, but they'll also say anything with the law written in it wasn't accessible to me. I mean, I'm thinking of it that they use it as an excuse as to why they may not know the law. Does that make sense? I'm processing too much right now. But I think that's what it is, and I don't think it's acceptable.
Okay, there's a hand up. Miss Jones, I don't know your first name.
Hi, darling. It's Donna, like Lady Madonna. How are you, dear?
Good.
I'm like one of these people who loves the song, and we got nothing to be guilty of. I love it. One of my, because our Heavenly Father, Adonai, loves us so much. And we have this Day of Atonement, it's very sacred, but we're only human. Rabbi Lynn said, we are only human. We cannot, if you beat yourself up, what does she think? What does she, I mean, my God, you never have a life. I do the best I can do. And I confess honestly, I'm in recovery. I'm doing the best I can do with what I'm doing. If you live where I live, you probably wouldn't even be as strong as I am. You'd be like out there, I'm sure. Well, you're a strong lady, but you have no idea. I mean, it's a hood and it's crazy because I can't even go outside. There's a drug deal going on outside. I don't want to be around it. So the good news is I got to sing for Kelly Clarkson's show. And then I found out that my great grandma and grandpa founded Pembroke Shire Castle in South Wales, and the rabbi was talking about inheritance and land, and the Bob Messi was, if you get girls and boys, you get your inheritance. Then Lord Jacob Race Rothschild, mayor, one of my grandpas, just died just recently. I didn't know what's going on. Everybody at Universal, I went to play. I was wearing lavender, and the Lord God, I live in a poverty state as a widow, and they rolled out the red carpet for me. My kids are 2,000 some miles away. I've never seen my grandkids since Moshe died. This is all happening for me at 70. And then I got a letter from the Queen of England. That's now incredibly valuable. I got a letter from Clarence House from Prince Charles, is now the King of England. And if I meet the King one day, which I probably would like Barbara Streisand, he can bequeath me that castle. And everybody from Gosher Boulevard Temple can come, and I'll work on a thing where you can fly out there. I'll fly you all out there. I have so much to be grateful for. I've been living in this area for 10 years. And if it wasn't for Wilshire Boulevard Temple, I would have lost my mind. Pretty much.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Love is the answer, honey. But I don't feel worried about the law because God's written on our hearts.
Thank you so much for sharing, Donna. I think we have some
darling.
other people with their hands raised. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wanted to ask specifically because this Torah portion mentions blessings and curses. There are 40 days. If you take the month of Elul and go until Yom Kippur, there are 40 days that each day you're supposed to say a blessing, something that's happened to you during this time. And I know for me, every day that I go by and I don't have COVID, I think that that's a blessing. My husband, who has had some health issues, we now might be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So that is a blessing for me. And I'd like to go around, and Merle, why don't you start?
And you say you're a blessing first, so
Okay. Okay. I would say that every day is definitely a blessing. I've had health issues since I was 12 years old. And I get up every morning and there's not much that I can't do. I push myself if I have to, but like 7.5 years ago, I was out riding my bike in the neighborhood and was hit by a woman, and I ended up, thank God, under a car, and the man picked me up and helped me. But none of that, and it was 2 blocks from home, so Arnie was there within seconds. But I with whatever health issues I've had between my diabetes and childhood blood issues, I just get up every morning and say, okay, what's on the calendar for today? And, you know, they tease me at camp. My grandchildren tease me. There goes the crazy lady with the walker, you know, because I get to places before anybody else does because I need it to stand up straight, or I use a cane or whatever. But I've never let any of that stop me. And I think that those are my blessings, so that sometimes we shouldn't be judgmental, but sometimes I listen to some things people say and I'm like, that's what you're complaining about? And that's wrong for me to think that way, because we don't know what's going on in everybody else's head or body. But, you know, and then there are people that make fun of me for whatever reason, or like, you know, why are you using that? Can't you do better than that? And I just live each day and grateful that I can do all the things that I do.
Beautiful. Okay. Lorraine, how about you?
I wasn't expecting you to call me.
She's going square to square. Be ready.
Well, actually, we are going to be moving out of state. So I am very thankful for us to have moved here to LA, and that I got the opportunity to meet this community. And I'll be joining Merle as an out-of-state member. And Meryl, I would love to hear about your experience and how you managed that, because moving out of state and leaving this community just seems like a very, very high lift for me to do. So
I'll post my phone number and email address in
would
the chat.
would love to connect with you on that.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, so that's for me. I'm thankful for the blessing of your companionship, all of the companionship that you give me every Friday on Torah study.
Well, the blessing of Zoom is that you're going to be able to continue. The first bat mitzvah I ever had to conduct on Zoom, I thought, oh my God, this is just horrible. But as I looked around at the many screens, I saw people joining us from France and from Portugal who never would have been able to attend this event. But I did also see a guy munching on a turkey leg. So remember, when you're on Zoom, you should maybe stop your video when that's happening. Okay, Rebecca, how about you? Just something that you're grateful for during these 40 days.
Well, every morning I say a prayer of gratitude because there's so much negativity. And so before I have that first bite of food in the morning, I say that prayer just to try to recenter myself.
Oh, that is wonderful.
That's beautiful.
Okay. Susan Ehrlich.
Well, I do the same every morning. Modeh ani lefanecha. I'm glad to get up. I'm glad to be able to get up and get out of bed. And I have a lot of blessings, and I just try and focus on that. And you said it, Rabbi Lynn, about Zoom. That has been an incredible blessing. I'm doing more on Zoom than I ever was able to do before, with, you know, factoring in transportation time. But I'm truly blessed. Health is one of the things, you know, and you have to do the best you can with the health issues you have, and then be thankful for those issues that you don't have health wise. And then for my husband and family and friends and Jewish communities and temple communities and all the Jewish groups that are that I contribute to, that are trying to work with the problems in the world. So those are blessings too. So
that's just an absolutely fabulous list. Okay, Gary, we haven't heard anything from you.
No, Hello, everyone. So
Hello.
in my family, we have an abnormally large number of people with birthdays in September. So last Sunday, we all got together and it was wonderful to just sit and spend the day with my family, which ranged from my mother, who's 92, to baby Annabelle, who is now 5 weeks. And it was a great feeling.
That's fabulous. That is such a wonderful blessing. Okay, Panina.
Okay. I'm muted.
You're good.
You are
We hear you.
unmuted. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We
Oh,
can.
okay. All right. I want to tell you that the Orthodox Jewry have a movement or a branch. It's called the Kollel. The Kollel means to include. And they have a synagogue. They have their own, I would say even cemetery plots. And they have rabbis, and those rabbis are Orthodox. And what the Kollel does is they choose a location, and they accept couples that are for mixed marriages. One spouse is Jewish and the other one never converted. And the word Kollel means inclusion. And it's a big community. And actually, my son passed away 10 years ago, and he was a member of that, even though he wasn't even married, because they are very accepting and very inclusive, like I said. And he would bring like a bottle of wine, kosher wine there, and it's supposed to be kosher, yes, everything, the food and everything. And they wear kippot, and they had talit and everything. And yet they are accepting couples Friday night and Shabbat morning into services and into a meal when one of the couple is not even Jewish and not showing any interest or doesn't let you know whether or not they converted or want to convert or will be converted. It's just that portion of it is not even mentioned. They're just being included. So I think it's very important for us to see that when you're talking about the Orthodox Jewry, that you cannot do generalizations. And we don't, if a person, God forbid, wants to put a swastika on a temple, they're not going to ask you if you are Reform or Orthodox or conservative. They're going to do it anyhow just because they're hateful people. So we don't want to give them any reasons and open the gate for those possibilities. So I think we should just mention the good, wherever it is that we want to, and not start comparing about different movements in different religions. Every religion have different, I would say maybe steps of how much they do, of how much they believe in, and how they treat it. So that's all I had to say. So thank God for everybody who is good and everybody who is trying to just live and that's it, and love. That's it. Okay, that's all I have to
Thank
say.
you for adding that. And I did want to mention something that you said right at the beginning, and I am very sorry to hear about the loss of your son. That makes you and I and some others members of the club nobody wants to join when we lose a child. But we go on and we find strength in other areas and we make their memories a blessing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So now let's going on because I want to mention that some of the earlier rabbis felt that God rewarded those who obeyed all the mitzvot, and others suggested perhaps it doesn't happen that way. You remember the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People? It happens all the time. Some people believe that the reward would be in the world to come, olam haba, and this idea recognizes that our world is far from perfect. Righteous people don't always get the rewards they deserve, and neither do the wicked. Both the authors of Job and Kohelet knew this, as did a contemporary writer, Dr. Harold Kushner, in his book, when he wrote about the tragic death of his son. Okay, so there is a really famous prayer that will come up next week in the Rosh Hashanah prayer book called Unatana Tokef. Let us cede power. It was written about 1,000 years ago by an unknown author in Northern Europe. Whether one comes to synagogue in order to hear it or stays away in order not to hear it. The poem epitomizes the high holiday prayer service for many contemporary Jews. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many will pass, and how many will be created? Who will live, and who will die? Who in their time, and who not in their time? Who by fire, and who by water? Who by sword, and who by beast? Who by hunger, and who by thirst? Who by earthquake, and who by drowning? Who by strangling, and who by stoning? Who will rest, and who will wander? Who will be safe, and who will be torn? Who will be calm, and who will be tormented? Who will become poor, and who will get rich? Who will be made humble, and who will be raised up? But teshuvah and tefillah and tzedakah, return and prayer and righteous acts, deflect the evil of the decree. It was written in Tablet magazine that the era when the Unatana Tokef was written was a precarious time for the Jews, full of massacres and forced conversions. The high holiday literature is packed with poems written in this specific period. In the scheme of things, they are relatively new additions. After all, Jews were celebrating Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for a long time before these poems existed. Unatana Tokef is not from the Bible, and it's not from the Talmud. It's just one poem written by one obscure author, and its imagery comes from one imagination. But like it or not, the imagery has stuck. Why? Because Unatana Tokef gives voice to what we really experience as we contemplate the future. Who will be blessed and who will be cursed? You know, I used to read that and think, oh, that's ridiculous. People don't die by stoning. People don't die by animals. People don't die by this. People don't die by that. And I have been proven wrong, I'm sorry to say. All of those things have happened, even who by sword. Okay, so the most famous commentator of all, Rashi, so famous that he got his own font, had his own thoughts on why the Torah gave a double warning. If you will listen, really listen to the commandments, is what he said. He felt that performing mitzvot at the beginning was challenging for most people. So therefore, they are enticed with blessings to get them to fulfill the mitzvot. Once they discover how pleasant it is to live within God's laws, they will happily perform them. Almost as famous was Moses Maimonides, who was the chief physician to the caliph, pointed out that people were promised good health if they obeyed the commandments, because without it, they would be unable to carry out the other commandments. Contemporary philosopher Rabbi David Hartman explains Maimonides' view with a story about his own father, a very traditional Jew. Every year they built a sukkah, but one year the rain deluged them so badly that they had to leave. His father explained God must have been unhappy with the community of Israel. David disagreed with his father, explaining simply that it's not a matter of reward and punishment. Rather, the world is just imperfect. Things just happen. And that's my philosophy as well. He said, God will give you the protection needed to perform mitzvot, but belief in God's protection should not make you oblivious to real dangers. You must combine your trust in God's protective love with a healthy respect for reality. And what I wanted to mention about that is, and Penina, I don't wish to cast any rain on your parade, but you talked about that we have to be mindful that no matter what denomination we're talking about, that there are positive things in every denomination. But there were at the beginning of COVID some enormous gatherings of Orthodox Jews, people who honestly believed God will protect me. And that
and who came up with the medicine? A guy who is a son of a Holocaust survivors. Okay, so pay attention to this. The first one that was proven the best, and the first one who got it was Israel. You have to remember that too. And they also share data with him, their own data. So the sentence, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, the teaching will come out of Israel. It's not a myth. That's it. All right.
Okay, and actually, I told you that my husband is now, I hope, close to the end of his tunnel. The Israelis, in case you don't know about this, initially invented a pill called the Smart Pill that you could swallow. It would go through your body and take pictures. They now have further enhanced that this pill takes 5 days to go through your body. You wear a little monitor, like a little bag with you, and it records everything that's going on in your insides. I marvel every day at some of the things I hear that are coming out of Israel.
What is this pill supposed to be for?
It can figure out any GI problems that you are having.
Cool.
Great.
That's wonderful.
Sometimes when I work with B'nai Mitzvah kids and they can't think of anything to say in their speech, I remind them that maybe they want to talk about Israel and some of the cool inventions that have come out of there. And when they hear the smartphone, I have them.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is new, this smart pill. Okay. Rabbi Stephen Carr Rubin, in his book, A Year with Mordechai Kaplan, approaches this portion by pointing out that Moses, in asking the children of Israel to obey.
I have to leave, I'm sorry.
Oh, please do.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
I'm sorry.
Shabbat shalom.
I understand anyone else who has to go, please do. We're almost done. So he points out that in asking the children of Israel to obey the mitzvot as they are about to enter the promised land, it reminds them that they have witnessed and experienced God firsthand, unlike some of their ancestors. They wandered in the desert for 40 years with shoes that never wore out. They ate and drank every day despite never having grown any of the crops or harvested them. And what about the divine revelation at Sinai? It's not as if their eyes hadn't seen, their ears hadn't heard, and their minds hadn't understood. So in the Midrash Mechilta Shirata 3, the sages comment, a maidservant saw at the splitting of the Red Sea what Isaiah and Ezekiel, two of the most famous prophets, and all the other prophets never saw. Mordechai Kaplan said, in religion, as in all other manifestations of human life, there are 3 distinct states: experiencing, knowing, and understanding. So the children of Israel couldn't transition from experiencing to understanding, because it's not an easy thing to do. Even we walk sightlessly through miracles. Think of the way our bodies work. That alone is the greatest miracle, one we take for granted until one day when it doesn't. And even though we might recognize the godliness, holiness, and divinity that fills our life, we suffer the same lack of understanding. So my closing wish for all of you in this high holiday season is that you take the time to recognize all of the blessings that we have. I wish you all a healthy, happy, and wonderful new year. Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you so much. This
Shabbat
was
shalom.
wonderful.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom,
shalom.
everybody. Thank you, Merle. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you tonight.